For as long as humanity has looked up at the stars, we've imagined other worlds and the possibilities of life beyond Earth. But as we venture further into the cosmos, we must also confront a sobering reality. The militarization of space, once the realm of science fiction, has rapidly become a reality, raising significant concerns. The very technologies that allow us to explore and utilize space can also be turned into tools of warfare, with potentially catastrophic consequences for all humankind.
Let's be clear, the final frontier is already bristling with weapons. The current generation of space weaponry is more about denying your adversary access to space and, by extension, access to the critical infrastructure that we all rely on here on Earth. Anti-satellite weapons, or ASATs, are a case in point. These missiles are designed to hunt down and destroy satellites in orbit. A successful ASAT strike could cripple communication networks, disrupt GPS systems, and blind intelligence gathering capabilities. Imagine a world suddenly without GPS, internet, or accurate weather forecasting. The chaos would be immense. Space-based missile systems are another terrifying prospect. Imagine weapons platforms orbiting the Earth, capable of launching devastating strikes anywhere on the globe with almost no warning time. The danger here is twofold. First, the mere existence of these weapons increases the likelihood of conflict. Miscalculation, mistrust, or plain old-fashioned aggression could easily spiral into a conflict with global consequences. Second, space warfare threatens to make the entire space environment a hostile domain. The debris created by a single ASAT test can linger in orbit for decades, posing a collision risk to other satellites and spacecraft.
We've all seen the images: sleek spacecraft gliding through the blackness of space, dotted with stars. But here's a less glamorous reality. Space is getting crowded, and not just with functioning satellites. Every space launch, every satellite collision, every anti-satellite weapon test leaves a trail of debris in its wake. Even tiny objects become dangerous projectiles when they're traveling at thousands of miles per hour. A single screw can cripple a multi-million-dollar satellite, and the impact generates even more debris, creating a vicious cycle. This brings us to the dreaded Kessler syndrome. Imagine a chain reaction, a domino effect of collisions in orbit, each impact creating a cascade of shrapnel that takes out even more satellites. The implications are staggering. The Kessler syndrome could effectively trap us on Earth, preventing future generations from exploring space, from accessing its resources, from fulfilling our potential as a spacefaring species.
Here on Earth, borders are drawn on maps, dividing nations and fueling conflict. But space, my friends, is a shared resource, a commons that belongs to all humankind. Militarizing this shared domain is a dangerous game, one that threatens to turn the cosmos into another arena for geopolitical rivalry and conflict. The development and deployment of space weapons create an atmosphere of mistrust and suspicion among nations, particularly between superpowers like the United States, Russia, and China. This arms race dynamic can easily escalate, leading to preemptive strikes, miscalculations, and the potential for conflict to spiral out of control. Treaties like the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, designed to ensure the peaceful exploration and use of space, are already under strain. As nations prioritize military advantage over shared responsibility, these hard-won agreements, the very cornerstones of international space law, are at risk of crumbling. Without clear rules and mechanisms for conflict resolution, space becomes a free-for-all, a lawless frontier where might makes right.
Chapter 4. The Panoptic Eye in the Sky. Surveillance and the erosion of privacy. We're used to the idea of surveillance here on Earth. Security cameras, facial recognition software, data tracking. These are all realities of modern life. But what happens when the surveillance apparatus moves to space? What happens when the eyes in the sky belong not to a government or corporation, but to a military force with global reach? Satellites equipped with high-resolution cameras, infrared sensors, and sophisticated listening devices already have the capability to track movements, intercept communications, and gather intelligence on a scale unimaginable just a few decades ago. The militarization of space raises serious concerns about the erosion of privacy, not just for governments and organizations, but for individuals as well. Imagine a world where your every move, every communication, every online interaction is monitored and recorded from orbit. This constant surveillance, this chilling lack of privacy, has profound implications for our fundamental freedoms.
Chapter 5. The Price of Space Dominance, Economic Inequality and the Militarization of the Cosmos. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the elephant in orbit. The militarization of space is an incredibly expensive endeavor. Developing, deploying, and maintaining space weapons systems requires vast sums of money, resources that could be used to address pressing problems here on Earth. For the cost of a single advanced spy satellite, we could build schools, hospitals, and provide clean water to entire communities. For the price of a space-based missile defense system, we could fund research into renewable energy, combat climate change, and lift millions out of poverty. The militarization of space diverts critical resources away from these vital areas, exacerbating existing inequalities and hindering our ability to create a more just and sustainable future for all. And who benefits from this militarization? Primarily the wealthy nations and powerful corporations that can afford to play in the space sandbox. This creates a dangerous dynamic where access to space and the strategic advantages it confers become increasingly concentrated in the hands of the already powerful. Every dollar spent on space weapons is a dollar not spent on education, healthcare, or environmental protection.
Chapter 6. The Privatization of War, Corporate Control, and the Future of Space. We've entered a new era of space exploration, one where private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are no longer just contractors, but active participants in shaping the future of space travel. And while this privatization has led to some remarkable achievements, it also raises some troubling questions about the blurring lines between commercial interests and military ambitions. Private companies now have the capability to launch satellites, develop spacecraft, and even send humans into orbit. This expertise, this technological prowess, doesn't exist in a vacuum. It can easily be co-opted or even coerced to serve military objectives. The danger here is that private companies driven by profit motives and beholden to shareholders could become key players in the militarization of space. This scenario raises serious concerns about accountability, transparency, and the potential for unchecked aggression.
Chapter 7. A Legal Vacuum. The Perils of Unregulated Space Warfare. The existing legal framework governing space, primarily the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, was drafted in a different era, a time when the Cold War was at its peak and the idea of space warfare seemed like a distant threat. Today, the reality of space militarization demands a reassessment of these legal instruments, a recognition that the rules of the game have changed. The Outer Space Treaty, while a landmark achievement in its time, is largely silent on the specific challenges posed by modern space warfare. This legal ambiguity, this lack of clear rules and prohibitions, creates a dangerous vacuum, a gray zone where aggressive actions can be taken without fear of reprisal. We need a new international legal framework for space, one that clearly defines acceptable and unacceptable behavior, establishes mechanisms for conflict resolution, and ensures that space remains a domain for peaceful exploration and cooperation.
Chapter 8. The Ultimate Threat, Nuclear Proliferation and the Weaponization of Space. Of all the threats posed by the militarization of space, none is more terrifying than the potential for nuclear proliferation in orbit. The very idea of nuclear weapons being deployed in space, capable of raining down destruction from the heavens, should send chills down our spines. Current treaties prohibit the stationing of nuclear weapons in space, but these agreements are only as strong as the commitment of the nations that signed them. As tensions rise and the strategic importance of space grows, the temptation to weaponize this domain with the most destructive weapons ever created will be difficult to resist. Imagine a world where nuclear-tipped missiles sit in geosynchronous orbit, capable of striking any target on Earth with little warning. The deployment of nuclear weapons in space would be a point of no return, a Rubicon cross that would forever alter the security landscape of our planet. We must do everything in our power to prevent this dystopian future from becoming a reality. Outro: Preserving Our Future, a call for peace in space. As we stand on the cusp of a new era of space exploration, we face a stark choice. Will we allow the cosmos to become another arena for conflict, another battleground littered with the wreckage of our ambitions? Or will we choose a different path, one that recognizes the shared responsibility we have for this precious domain? The future of humanity, both here on Earth and among the stars, depends on our ability to choose cooperation over conflict, diplomacy over destruction,